Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Event Collab podcast. Today, we're super excited. We have Shannon Lockwood with us. Shannon, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Chris.
It's so
Thank
great to
you.
have you on. Mark, what's going on? I know I always forget
You
Mark,
always
and so
do.
I have
I'm
to
just sitting here
make an
grinning
extra.
like, yeah, exactly. I'm doing well today too, Chris. Thank you. I
That's so
appreciate
good.
you asking.
Hey, look, I didn't forget, man. I didn't even make a note. You should be happy. I remembered. I remembered that
That's
this time.
awesome.
It's on your
Yes, it's right
checklist.
there.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Sweet. Well, Shannon, look, let's jump right in. For our audience, can you just tell them who you are, kind of what you do, and why we even called you, like how you know Mark, any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So my name is Shannon Lockwood. I am the founder and CEO of a independent planning company called Lockwood Collaborative. Mark and I have known each other for the better part of, oh man, we're going on 7 or 8 years now. We met when I was working for Hargrove, doing events, trade shows, special event type behavior, and we were working with J Street directly on a couple of wonderful projects in some lovely tropical locations, and got to know him there, and his lovely wife Erica and their fabulous son Carson has been obsessed with sailboats since he's about 2 years old because of me. So that is how I sort of came into the mix here. But happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Carson was asking about when we're going to go on Miss Shannon's sailboat last week. I sort of forgot
amazing.
to tell you that. One of the 2-hour trips to Philly.
It's ready.
Yeah, okay, great. I'll mention it. And
Absolutely. It's ready. We're ready to go.
There you go. So how I don't know that I know how you got into the event industry, Shannon.
Oh, really? Okay. So I have this year, actually today, 10 years ago today, I started working for the Baltimore Convention Center. I had an internship at St. Mary's College of Maryland with their historic St. Mary's City, which is like the Maryland fourth grade field trip. Everybody goes and learns about the founding of Maryland. And I interned for them and planned events for their biggest donor foundation. I planned orientation at some point for St. Mary's, I think sophomore to junior year. And so I was responsible for lots of events on campus. I built the pub. We built an on-campus alcohol outlet for everybody my senior year, and I was like the lead student liaison on that project.
That and sailing don't go together at all.
Not one bit, none of it. And so I have been doing events sort of in a public-facing way for most of my time through college, and then a friend of mine who went to St. Mary's went to work for the Baltimore Convention Center, and I sort of had followed her career, just sort of saw how she got out of this tiny little school that does not have a hospitality program, and where did she go? What did she do? And when she moved on from the BCC, she actually reached out to me and said, hey, this job's open, you should apply, and sort of went from there. Moving, sort of further back in the world of my parents have known I was going to be an events person since I was in middle school. I planned Thanksgiving at 12. I told my parents, my dad is one of 10, my mom's one of 4. There are usually 60 to 70 people at our Thanksgiving dinner. And I heard that like somebody wasn't sure what we were going to do, but my dad had sort of offered to do it at the house. And I was like, I got it. And I went down the list and made the guest list and who was going to bring what. And then everybody showed up and I said, put that there, make sure the dessert goes over on this table. So it's been a long time coming. I've definitely been doing this sort of in my blood since I was a kid. And then St. Mary's was definitely the jumping off point. But I've worked for the Baltimore Convention Center, the Richmond Convention Center. And then, as you know, we met working for Hargrove. And then a couple other stops between there and here, but lots of fun things.
So what is it that you like enjoyed most about the event industry, like that you even stuck around for it?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think every job that I've had has had some sort of unique purpose of connecting people. I think my my first steps into the industry, I really liked being involved in those bigger events, certainly with Hargrove, getting to work on the inauguration and the Democratic National Convention, some of those really big, sort of noteworthy, newsworthy type things were a large part of the initial draw. But I think when I recall all of the places I have worked and all the jobs I have done, every last one of them has been important to me because of the people we were connecting at the end point, right? Introducing students to St. Mary's in a way that was just as special as when I got introduced to it. Bringing people to the wonderful city of Baltimore, bringing people to the wonderful city of Richmond, making a connection between a place and people that want to visit or live there is always sort of at the heart of it. And I think now that I'm, 10 years into this career path, it's really important for me to pick events and projects that are fighting for good causes and working to connect people who are making those causes reality. So for me, it always comes back to, who are we serving and how do we use the skills that we have in being sort of logistics magicians and, lighting and AV technicians to make those connections really important for other people.
That's really great. So I know that you were already doing virtual, like full virtual events before anybody even knew what the full pandemic experience was. I mean, when live events were full blown going, you were in the middle of doing full, like nothing but virtual events. So by the time the pandemic hit, like in my mind, you were already like an expert at, like you knew what Zoom was. I didn't even know what Zoom was. You were, I've been using it for years. So how?
Yeah,
I was going to ask you how connecting people changed for you in the pandemic, or maybe it didn't. So
I think to the latter part, maybe it didn't. I think so when I left Hargrove, I went to work for one of their clients, NIGP, the Institute for Public Procurement. They're a small nonprofit organization that benefits government procurement folks. And their whole mission serves city, state, local, some federal, but not a ton. So procurement organizations. So you're talking about government employees with not tons of travel budgets. And they saw, but even before I arrived, a disconnect between their membership and who was attending their annual meeting, right? The annual meeting was roughly 1,800 people. When I arrived, we were 6 weeks from their annual meeting in 2018, and we were doing something that they called Forum Select. And so all we did was record the plenary and 7 individual workshop sessions. And we rebooted it like 6 weeks later on a virtual platform, all asynchronously. And then the presenters came in and text-based chatted with the attendees, right? That was the scope of the virtual meeting. And like I said, this is 2018. And so when we got a taste of that, even with 13 contact hours, right? I think we did it over 2 days, only 13 hours of content. We had people lining up saying, this is amazing. We can't get to the annual meeting. There's 10 people in my department and we have to win the lottery to be the one that gets selected because they put the names in the hat and they draw one out and it's not my turn. So how do I get access to continuing education hours? How do I maintain my certification? And so it really cut out a large opportunity for NIGP to engage with its membership, especially its younger members, right? We sort of think of government employees as entrenched 30, 20-year veterans who are riding it out till they can get to retirement. And some of those retirement programs that exist for people that have been there for 20 and 30 years aren't promised to people who are just starting out in the workforce. And they struggle to draw, younger audiences to those jobs because people are worried they're not going to get those pension programs. So they didn't have access to that audience. And how do you make a membership of an association younger if they can't even get to your content? And so one of the ways that NIGP felt they could engage this younger audience and really spur interest and maintain interest in public procurement was through these virtual events. And so we actually went from that 13 session reboot a month after the annual meeting to, okay, now we're going to do a fully pre-recorded set of sessions over 3 days. And we've got 2 tracks. And like, this is crazy in 2019, right? And my job at the time was to schedule a pre-record. And I hopped on Zoom and set them up and staged them appropriately and said, okay, you look great. You sound good. Everybody's only going for 10 megabits per second internet usage. So if I had 10 up and 10 down, you were winning. Everything was excellent. And so I recorded all 10 of them and dealt with, I'm sure, what you guys have seen over the last couple of years, which is, oh, I can't make that time. Or, and you guys are the vendor, right? That was your problem. And at that time, we did not have the money to pay for that. That was not something we did. And so I recorded all of them. I timestamp edited everybody. I sent it to our technical provider and said, hey, I need you to take this video and I need you to cut like these timestamps to make this an hour and 5. And so I did that for 10 sessions, put it back together, still asynchronous, text chat, everything. And then we went and did the 2019 meeting in the fall, the summer, live. We had a live stream of 3 out of the 4 days were streamed live, plenary and one room. And so we had a taste of all of the ways that it's now possible for every association to do content. We had tried every last one of them before COVID even happened. And then, so when COVID came around, they said, what do we do? And I said, we just do what we've been doing. We take this schedule that was in person over 4 days, and we turn it into 4 days over here. We slide the whole program from Sunday to Wednesday to Tuesday to Friday or Monday to Thursday, whatever we did. And we just do it. And they're like, well, what about like live interaction? I said, put it on Zoom. Like we don't have to control every bit of this. It would be nice. It would be great if we could. If we can pre-record most of it, that would be awesome. And the platform, we were really lucky that the platform we had, we didn't have to hunt and fight and elbow people to get a platform. We had one, and that vendor was like, oh, you already know how to use it. You guys don't need our help. Here's how you do it. It was very DIY. And so we just put it together. And I think the added advantage of what we were in a position to do was, what else do we do? How else do we make it better? So before everyone else got their hands wrapped around what it was, we were already talking about, okay, how do we make this more interesting? Do we add a magician? Do we add a bartender? Do we add some sort of networking conversation? And so we were pushing sort of on the edge of that, probably outside of the scope of everybody's ability and understanding of how to do it on the attendee side. I think we freaked a lot of people out because we were throwing a lot of new things at them. But ultimately, I really thought that we were, really innovative at the time. And certainly now everyone has light years bounced over what that production, was for us. But at the time we were introducing a group of individuals who'd only ever done an in-person meeting to something totally new and different, and connecting that younger audience, connecting everybody for, the last 2 years while it was really difficult to do so otherwise.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's easier now to connect people because you can do it live and virtual now?
I
do. Or do you feel like it's worse, like it's harder than it was pre-pandemic?
I don't.
Like, what do you see the state of the industry is too, as we're?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me because I think the things we don't worry about anymore are that people know how to use Zoom. Right now, you have to worry about, do people know how to use WebEx? Right? If you use WebEx for something, that's a whole other download. So if you stay within the boxes that people have learned over the last 2 years, I think it's really easy to keep people connected. And while I know that there are lots of people struggling to make decisions about going back in person or whether or not to travel, if that works for them or their family, or whether that works for their company to allow them to do that, I think the people that do get back in person are so excited to be there, right? And there's so many obstacles, right? They still, want to talk about how much social distancing there is and if you need a vaccine or not. But I think ultimately, once you make all of those choices, right, those are individual choices for every organization to make. But once you've made them, the people that fit in the box of who can come and who can afford to come, it is such a rewarding experience. And then for those individuals who have gotten really used to virtual, who that works for them, right? There's a significant portion of people attending events right now who like virtual events. I think there are a lot of people who, especially on the planning side, left the industry thinking like, this isn't for me. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And that's 100% valid. But there is still a significant portion of folks who like attending virtual events, who enjoy getting content in that way, whether or not an in-person option is accessible to them and available to them. I think there are just people that like it. And to your question of, does that help connect us easier or faster or better? I think the answer is yes.
So do you feel like in the people that you're working with now, do you feel like there's the same ROI on the virtual side, or do you see it dropping off a little bit?
So the folks I'm working with now are in a position where the ROI doesn't change for in-person versus virtual. I think folks who have a larger exhibit contingent, there are lots of exhibitors and sponsors. I think folks that are dealing with that variable definitely have to be more creative to get that ROI. But if you are speaking of groups that are focused mostly on attendee educational outcomes and attendee engagement outcomes, I think it's absolutely the same. I think people are, able to prove, and maybe the ROI is even better, that you're not really investing, a couple $100s or a couple $1,000s to travel somewhere to get the same type of education. And while the in-person connections are not being replaced, the hallway conversations, the happy hours, the social component cannot be overstated that is very important. But from a content perspective and an educational perspective, I think it's not any different. Now, if you layer in exhibitors and sponsors and, can I get you touch points? It's much more difficult to do that virtually. It's just not, it's not something that we've found a good way to make happen. And I think the way that I've seen it work best and things that we were doing at NIGP, because we were in a position to do it, we were layering them into the content, allowing them FaceTime to have conversations with members and engage over a specific topic that was of mutual interest to the learner and the supplier. And so if you are able, and I understand that not every organization, not every association is able to engage it with their sort of paid community that way, for those that can, it is possible, but it is not a virtual exhibit booth, right? It's a very different designed outcome than it would be, in person.
Yeah, that's so good. That's I was thinking about, because I actually got a couple weeks ago, I got to attend an event from the other perspective as being the attendee and speaker. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it was literally the like you said, the teaching portion. A lot of people didn't even show up for the actual things. Everybody was just trying to hang out because they hadn't seen each other in 2 years. And so it was like, okay, I get it. Like exactly what you're saying. And so their next event is virtual because they're like, oh, just the teaching is virtual. We'll just come together for a big party next year or something.
That's right.
So that's so good.
And I love that, right? I think it's excellent to get out of each experience what you are trying to get and use each format for what it's best suited for.
Absolutely. Switch gears a little bit. What what made you choose to go out on your own and start a new company?
So I think, the thing for me was specifically around like wanting to go back to a little bit more of the variety and the diversity of what I had been doing prior to going to the association space. I think there is so much opportunity, especially coming out of the pandemic, with organizations that need help to design new and different opportunities and experiences for their members. And I really think that takes people who are willing to think out of the box and who are willing to be a little bit more, fly by the seat of their pants, if you will, in terms of like what the plan is. And so for me, I think my desire was to go back to a little bit more of the diversity of, okay, one day we're going to do an event, one day we're going to do a trade show, one day we're going to do a gala. And some days we're going to be working on social justice causes, and some days we're going to be talking about government, procurement, and other days we're going to talk about, saving the rainforest. And so for me, getting back to connecting with the specific mission of who I'm working with was really important. And I think being independent has allowed me to go back to a little bit more of that.
So the timing of when you did that seems like it's a little risky. I mean, to do it now, when you started a little bit, I mean, the outside looking in, that's kind of seems like maybe a risky proposition, but it clearly wasn't for you though. So.
I can't say that it isn't risky. I like to say that I've worked really hard to be this lucky. Right. I've worked really hard to build the network of people that supports this crazy independent dream. Right. I think just the nature of this conversation that we have stayed connected, now 5 years post my time with Hargrove. And every step of my time, Baltimore, Richmond, Hargrove, NIGP, every vendor, every city, every hotelier, anybody who found out that I jumped off the cliff was like, how do I get my hands on your time? How do I help you? Can you come over here and help us? And so, yes, on its face, it looks really risky. And inside, depending on the day, it still feels really risky, right? There is no PTO. There is no full healthcare plan. There is no 401k matching. Like, we are out here figuring it out every single day, every single month. But I think what I have been shown, over the course of the last 6 months, which is essentially as long as this has been going on, is that being willing to reach out to that network and to remind those people that I'm here. I'm still doing all of the things that you've seen me do. And perhaps even from the last time you saw me, which at this point could be 9 years ago, I'm doing it bigger. I'm doing it better. I've been all of these places. I've done all of these things. And while I am certainly, building upon the success of many that collaborated with me in those spaces in the past, I bring all of those pieces to the table now. And so it doesn't feel as scary as I think some people might think it should, which I think the one thing I said at the very beginning was, if this feels an equal amount of exciting and terrifying, I'm right in the sweet spot of what I'm trying to land on.
Yeah, I remember some of the early conversations we had over some bagels when you were considering.
Right.
And they were super fun conversations. And I think, to say that we've stayed in touch is maybe an understatement.
Right.
I mean, you watch my child. I trust you to watch my child while Erica and I go out to dinner sometimes. So absolutely, yeah. One of the things that I enjoyed watching from like backstage, watching how you worked, was how you keep 5,000 things going on at once, but you have this like, I feel like one of your superpowers is that you have this presence about you. Like when you're in the room with somebody, you're in the room with them. Or when you're on the phone with somebody, you're on the phone with them. You could be backstage in the middle of a chaotic load in and have a 10-minute conversation with somebody on the phone, and you're with the person on the phone, not at that chaotic loadout. So how is it from a mindset standpoint that you accomplish staying so like present and in the moment in the midst of like what all of us in the event industry see is like this chaotic juggling of all the pieces that we all do all the time?
So it's certainly by no means a unique superpower. I think there are lots of events folks that the reason they're good at what they do is because they can maintain this, like, everything is fine, nothing is on fire, there is absolutely not chaos going on behind that curtain. But I think for me, hearing you say that all out loud is very generous, because I appreciate that very much. And I will say that I think growing up in a house of 5 kids, like being the oldest and like being responsible for, making sure that while that is chaos, it's organized chaos and nobody died and nobody went to the ER, and, being responsible has made me very calm in the face of like otherwise chaotic situations. And I also think that, there are people that I've encountered throughout my time within, I think Hargrove specifically is the one that sort of reminds me the most critical lessons on calm that I've gotten, right? And one person that comes to mind is, Tiffany told me once, if you can do nothing else, you can pick up trash, right? The client walks in and sees the space all messy, and the first thing they think is everything's on fire. So if we can clean that up and we can make their visual experience smoother, they're going to be more calm. And the other piece, which I, in recalling it, I always laugh, because I was doing a trade show in New Jersey, and the project manager, Kyle Bozarth, told me, I know that you need this. I know you've asked me 12 times. I know that the client needs it in 20 minutes, and I'm sorry that I haven't gotten that done for you yet. But if every time you need something, you come over here screaming like the curtain has fallen down and the drape is all gone and somebody ran away with $12 million worth of computers, every time you come over here, I'm just going to assume it's just some run-of-the-mill thing. He goes, if you can come to me and tell me, hey, I need you to prioritize this, this, and this in a calm, cool, and collected manner, the one time you come screaming, I'm going to jump. And I'm going to know that you're serious. And so those two things sort of have always stuck with me about, maintaining a level of separation between the chaos that's occurring and the client. But on a larger scale, I think it's just really important to be present, right? I think it's important that especially as an independent planner, if you don't feel like you're getting 100% of my attention and you don't feel like I'm 100% committed to your cause, there's not a lot of reason to bring me back the next time. And it's genuine. It doesn't come from a place of like needing to be with you the next time, but it is my job to make sure that you feel like you're the only person in the room. And it's not your problem if I've got 3 fires going on behind me. Whether that's your program or not that's on fire, it's not your problem that they're on fire. It's mine. And so maintaining a level of presence, maintaining that level of, clarity of purpose, if you will, for what we are here to do right now, it's solution oriented, it's forward thinking, it's not, I don't necessarily in those moments, like, if people want to talk about why something is happening, well, I don't have time for why, right? I need you to get past why. I need to go to what we're going to do about it, which, Mark, as you know, we've done how many events that, the kit showed up without half of the stuff we needed. And we say, okay, well, now what's plan B? It doesn't matter that I can call somebody and complain to their boss that it's not here and it's not right. The goal that we have to solve and the problem we have to solve right now is how do we get How do we get this person, the client, the group, the attendees, what is their experience going to be? And how do we make sure that that is resolved in this moment? And so I really think that it's important to just be there. It doesn't, the only other connection I can think that really has like drilled that to me is that my mom has said to me that when my grandmother was alive, that was like the one thing that she did, right? She has a boatyard. She's got 10 kids. She's responsible for this business that, you know, is now worth millions of dollars. And you'd come in and sit in her office and she'd be doing payroll. She'd be paying bills. She'd be doing something. And you'd come in and the only person in the room was you. And that was client, that was grandchild, that was in-laws, outlaws, everybody. So I think that is a core piece of why I'm the way that I am, is because that's like what I experienced. But I think it translates because that's customer service, right? Like that is who the model of customer service that I had grown up was that.
That's so good. So one question I wanted to ask was why for the business Lockwood Collaborative?
Good question. So I will never take credit for this. My friend's name is Lauren Tarasik. She is one of my dear industry friends. And she and I were having dinner talking about what are we going to do, right? Are we going to go independent? Are we going to be Shannon Elizabeth events, Shannon Lockwood events? That's so like everybody's played that out. Everybody did that. And without prompting, you know, any sort of words I was thinking about, I did no exercise on this at all. She just said, "What about Lockwood Collaborative?" And I picked up my wine glass and I put it toward her and toasted her. I said, "That's it." I said, that's all. Like, we're done. It was so simple. And it's because everything that I do, I aim to do with everybody around me. Like, we reverse engineered the meaning from the prompting. It perfectly describes the work that I like to do. And I think that's why it resonated with me so quickly. But it was not an exercise, a word choice exercise of what is the best, descripting adjective for Shannon. It is, it was truly just a spark from a friend that said, "Oh my God, that's exactly it." And, I'm really proud of it. I think that it gives me some range. I think the work that I do within events is only a small part of the work that could be done. And being Lockwood Collaborative rather than Lockwood Collaborative events or any derivation of that really allows me some flexibility for like what this becomes 10 years from now.
And it does fit you perfectly. It does describe how you are perfectly. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, we have some rapid fire questions.
Okay. Of course.
You prepared?
Already feeling in the hot seat. I'm in the north. I'm in the southwest corner of my house. So this room, about this time of day, this time of year, goes up 10 degrees. So I'm already in the hot seat. I'm ready.
All right, Perfect. Here we go. You ready?
Coffee
or tea?
What is your favorite mobile phone app?
This week, it's Duolingo. Most of the time, it's Instagram. This week, it's Duolingo.
Instagram. What was it last week? Okay.
Instagram.
Week before? Okay. All right. What's the one question that you wish people would ask you? Or maybe said differently, like, what didn't we ask you that we just didn't know to ask?
Maybe what do I do outside of work? I feel like a lot of my friends are talking about what do I, they're like, I don't really want to talk about work. And I am consumed and possessed by it right now. Like, I love talking about what I'm doing. I love talking about the events industry. So I don't quite get that question a lot because I am sort of consumed with it at the moment. But I have a lot of friends who are like, I don't want to talk about work. What's going on outside work? So that's like the only thing that I could think of that would strike me as like, we haven't talked about it.
So what is it that you do outside of work?
The last couple of weeks, I was going to say what I like to do outside of work is sailing and cooking. And I admit that I have not done a lot of that in the last month or so, being fairly busy. You know, it's convention season, so a little tough to do that. But yeah, I love spending time on my boat, and all winter, you know, the schedule's allowed, and we sailed, I think, every Sunday, racing from November to March, which was just awesome. And I'm hoping that now that things are a little more settled, that we'll get some more sailing in the rest of this year. My dad and I have been racing J80s since 2008 together. And the Worlds are coming up in Newport in the fall, and I'm really hopeful that we can pull it together and go up and do some of that, despite it being dead smack in the middle of convention season, the last week of September, first week of October. I'm like, gotta go by. So that's normally what I like to be doing.
Well, also now that now that I know that you want to go, I have a 5-year-old that I'm going to maybe, summons to put a little pressure on you too. So. Expect some cute videos in your phone.
Those are my favorite.
So besides the Event Collab podcast, what is your favorite, podcast or blog or book that you listen to?
So yesterday I read 240 pages of Erin Morgenstern's The Night Circus. It's the second time I've read it. I misremembered the ending, so I'm really glad that I got all the way through it. Loved it. That was really excellent. But that's, definitely creative nonfiction. In terms of podcast, I have been listening to a lot of Binge Mode over the last year, which is basically I would say call it pop culture, but they binge certain TV shows and books and movies. And the one, obviously, that resonates most with me is they did Harry Potter, and they did each book sort of a couple chapters at a time. Nice. And then they'd get to the end of the book and they do the movie. And they have a Star Wars, there's a Marvel, there's a Game of Thrones. And so they sort of break down all the characters and they help you follow the story, pulling out like motifs and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed Binge Mode.
Nice.
Hey, I just went to the Harry Potter exhibition in Philadelphia at the Franklin Museum, I think is what it is.
I have not. I have been to the Warner Brothers studio tour in London. Outside of London, you have to go on the train and then take a bus, and then you get to the studio, and it's amazing. My phone was almost totally dead, so I have about 3 pictures that prove I was there. And none of the big reveal at the end, which I will not spoil for anybody who hasn't had a chance to go, but big Harry Potter fan over here. I don't know if you guys can see up top on my shelf over there? A little Lego.
Oh, yeah, up top.
That's what's been hovering in the corner of the screen for the last couple minutes. Nice. Mm-hmm. All right, so speaking of London, what is your favorite city to work in? Oh, favorite city to work in. I have to say that my favorite city that I've worked in so far has been, I guess you would call it, it's not quite San Clemente, Oceanside, California. I did a couple of shows on a blacktop parking deck with a big white tent for the Marines a couple of times. But I got to go to Southern California in February 2 years in a row. So that was my favorite location because you were, 5 minutes from the beach and beautiful weather in Southern California in the winter. But in terms of convention city, I think I have not had to work in San Francisco yet. I've only attended, but I really enjoyed that experience. And, got to throw some love at DC because I'm there all the time. I really think the diversity of venues that I get to see in DC helps me really appreciate spending time downtown and getting to be there.
Yeah, it's a fun city to work in for sure. What's your favorite city to sail in?
Oh, I don't know, it's got to be Annapolis. There's no way to compare. I live here. I've lived here for
No
the
kidding.
last 6 years or so. And I am just so glad that I live in a place where I have to explain to people that there's sailing every night of the week in this town. And, destination, the BVI is gorgeous. I've been a couple of times with family, and my boyfriend's family and I went for Thanksgiving a few years ago, and that was awesome. But in terms of, just access and how often we get to, there's no comparison to Annapolis for me, for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Where do you think the industry will be in 3 years?
Man, that's a crystal ball question that nobody has an answer for. I think, well, let's just say I hope that we have gotten to a point where the pandemic is not canceling events anymore, that we're dealing with a level of virus that's low enough that we're not getting people sick at meetings, or not, having to count the number of people that are sick at meetings. I think virtual is going to stick with us. I think, seeing how associations and companies are going to be able to do hybrid in a meaningful way, providing an excellent experience to both their in-person and their virtual attendees, is going to be really important. And I hope to see some innovation on that side that's going to help planners deal with the expense, because I think that's where a lot of people right now are sort of falling prey to one or the other, is that there isn't a really democratized solution for how to get your content from in person to your attendees in a professional way, right? Anybody can pick up their phone and live stream on Facebook, but is that really the experience you want for your people? Probably not. So I'm interested in seeing how we can find ways to be really, really connecting the dots for those organizations that don't have the budget to just two-way stream everything and bring people in on mic, on camera from the virtual audience. I'm really interested in how we can get more access for the virtual audience, so that you're not feeling like it's so separate, or having to make a choice between one or the other, and pushing you to all virtual because it's cheaper, or all in person because we can't afford the virtual component. So I hope that there's a path forward there in the next couple of years. And I also think that events over the next 3 years are going to have to be really creative. I really hope, I've been reading a lot of Janet Sperstad's work, and if you don't know who she is an instructor for IAEE and teaches a neuroscience of exhibitions and events course. She's also a professor at Madison College that does work around the, sort of the science and the brain science of how to create meaningful experiences and get the best out of your event attendees. And I would love to see some of the things that she talks about, which is, making sure that you've got green space, actual like plants and outside incorporated into your meeting, white space, not having every single minute of every conference day scheduled to the teeth so that you can't even breathe. Making creative choices about when you place difficult content, having budget meetings first thing in the morning is actually, I know it seems horrible, but between 9 and 11 is probably the right time when people have had their coffee and they're engaged. We shouldn't be doing budget meetings when everybody's having that afternoon crash at 2:30. And so, being intentional about when you choose to do content and what types of content you place, getting people more involved, doing smaller rather than sage on stage and everybody listens for, an hour. I think we're in a time where people are interested in not only being at an event, but also being heard at an event. And so how do we, make all events more collaborative? Can we build things that are smaller and you hear from more people because you're not unidirectionally forcing content at them? We've been talking about these things for a long time, but I hope that we see, some actual execution on those points from organizations that are willing to take that leap away from what we've always done.
That's great. That's really great. I hope we get there too. Those are very good closing thoughts.
Awesome.
That's all we have, Shannon. It was lovely having you, and I can't wait to get the 5-year-old out on the sailboat with you.
Let's make that happen soon. Thanks for having me, Chris. It was a pleasure. Mark, thanks so much, and we'll chat soon.
See you soon. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Shannon.